Hi everyone, Chaz916 here. Thank you for joining me. Today I want to take a closer look at the video New Dungeon Master's Guide Deep Dive Core Rulebook with Todd Kendreck and Chris Perkins. Thanks again for joining me. Remember to click the subscribe button if you haven't already and ring the notification bell so that you don't miss any of my content and to encourage YouTube to show my content to more people. Let's get started.
Hello everyone, today we are talking about the Dungeon Master's Guide and some revisions, some updates that may be coming out. So you've kind of communicated some of this before, but we're going to see kind of a cooler Dungeon Master's Guide that is perhaps more user-friendly.
Okay, before we move on from here, I'd like to take a moment to take a look at the DMG as it is today, and also to address some of the concerns expressed by the community. Okay, number one, a description of the DMG. The 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide is a full-color, 320-page hardcover book. The DMG is organized into 3 sections based on 3 core DM tasks: creating worlds, creating adventures, and running the game. 2 notable subcategories are included in the book. They are optional rules and the all-important magic item list. Okay, so the problems expressed in the community kind of boil down to a few simple things. Well, relatively speaking, hard to navigate, hard to find specific pieces of information, it's badly organized, also goes along with hard to navigate, and instructions on how to play the game are slim, almost absent, and very hard to follow and get through. Okay, so now I'm going to restart the video and we're going to listen to what Chris Perkins has to say about the problems that the WOTC has heard and what they hope to do to solve them. Alright, so let's get back to the video.
Yeah, so I think most people know by now that the 50th anniversary of D&D is coming up in 2024. And one of the things we are coming out with during that year is this revised DMG. Now, I worked on the 5th edition DMG, as did a number of other people. And which is now, let's see, it'll be 10 years old next year.
Right.
And with all of the core rule books, we've gotten a lot of feedback. We've done a lot more playtesting, and we've concluded that there are some wonderful new things we can do to make the DMG, like you say, a better user experience for folks. Everything is kind of on the table. We're looking at the organization of the book itself. We're looking at some of the content and ways that we can present that content more clearly or more visually, or just in a more sort of engaging or accessible way. And we're looking at what new things can we squeeze into the book that we think is of paramount importance to new and experienced dungeon masters.
Is there anything that sticks out the most for you in particular when it comes to because you want new dungeon masters to instantly be able to feel like they're being supported by the book?
Absolutely, and one of the things that we want to do to address that is the current DMG, the way it's organized. It kind of throws you right into the deep end of the pool. Like chapter 1 is about building a campaign.
Right.
And coming up with different governments and figuring out what your currencies are and what the religions of the world are. That's a deep dive right off the bat.
Create an entire world now.
Exactly. And then some of this stuff later in the DMG, like as late as chapter 8, is all about what are these funny dice and how do you use them? And okay, well, that's kind of backwards.
Yeah.
So maybe we should sort of change the organization up and make the early parts of the chapter about here are the basics. Here are the things you need as a DM to kind of just to run the game. You know, what is a DM screen and what's it for? The DMG currently is silent on that topic. So once we get the fundamental stuff, if we can push that more to the front and save okay, now that you understand how the game is supposed to work and how the social dynamic of the group works, maybe now we can talk about creating your own stuff. So thinking about the organization in terms of what is the natural order of information that new DMs need, and then taking a look at the information in the DMG and figuring out, how can we sort of regroup it in a more natural way? The DMG will have a section up front called the basics, and then it will have a section with sort of walking the DM through some of the common things that happen during play and how to address those issues. Chapter 3 is the rules compendium, the alphabetized, here's all the rules that basically aren't in the player's handbook. Chapter 4 is all about adventure building. Chapter 5 is all about campaign building. Chapter 6 is the cosmology chapter. And Chapter 7 is magic items. Chapter 8 is a surprise.
Okay, here, I would like to, well, since he's mentioning Chapter 8, let's talk about Chapter 8 in the current DMG guide. It is titled, Chapter 8 is titled Running the Game. It covers pages, let's see, what is it, pages 235 to 260. And as near as I can tell, everything that you need is there, but it's not organized very well. There's very few examples. It seems to be written more for experienced players. I'm not sure that it's going to be very helpful to people with no experience with D&D or very little. And it seems to me that they've squeezed it into 25 pages, and this is the part that should be a major chunk of the DMG. Okay, so let's continue on.
To be talked about potentially later.
Excuse me?
And then there are the appendices, including a map appendix and a lore glossary appendix. And then there's something that the DMG doesn't currently have, but the new one will, which is a poster map.
Okay. Of?
A surprise.
Fantastic.
There's also advice that I think is just missing from the book that we can add. We know that DMing has lots of traps. There are things that can happen during a game that you can, as a DM, whether you're a new DM or an experienced DM, can quickly realize, oh, this could get me into trouble, or how am I going to get out of this? You almost feel like you're clawing your way out of a pit sometimes, or dodging, things being flung your way.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that as a DM? What are some specific, tried and true things that we can tell you that will help you get over these hurdles and climb out of these pits?
Okay, so I have a few things here I'd like to add. Suggestions, really. Number 1, listen to the players and use the things that they say. Number 2, I hope this doesn't get me, well, I'm not monetized yet, so it doesn't matter. You should write up an oh shit book. At least that's what I call it. Basically, it's a small book. I keep it near me. It has a mix of maps that I have never used. It has a pre-generated town that I have never used. I have name lists, encounter tables, all right there in one place, so that if I have to create something on the fly, I've already got a good start on it. It's just one of my suggestions. Okay, so let's continue on.
It's all kind of improv, right? Like,
Yes.
you never know where things are going to go. You can gently guide things, but you ultimately, they may abandon the town that you've designed.
They might. How do you sculpt and change the direction of your campaign to allow your players to contribute to the story, while at the same time getting to the plot?
Yeah.
These are common issues that DMs of all experience levels deal with, and we think we can do a better job of presenting the answers to those riddles. This new DMG is also a chance to continue the evolution that has been happening with 5th edition since the Core Rulebook's launched. Like, we have released other books, for instance, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and Xanathar's Guide to Everything, that have material in them that is actually pretty integral to the game.
Right.
An example is in Tasha's, there's a section called Session 0 about running the the pregame, as it were, helping your players build their characters, and then helping to create a sort of set the standards of your campaign.
Okay, I would like to put my endorsement up for this idea. I think that session zeros are great. I think that they give you a way of solving a lot of problems before the game even starts. Okay, so let's continue on.
Front very clearly so that nobody is disappointed, nobody feels uncomfortable, and it would be great if we could absorb that content into the DMG itself. So there are a few choice bits of content from those rules expansions that I want to pull into the core.
Is there like any particular feedback that you've heard the most of in like just communicating with people that you've met?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say the feedback that I often get about the DMG specifically is, oh, I didn't know that was in there.
Right. I've heard that a few times.
Or, I know it's in there, but I have trouble finding it.
Yeah.
And that just points to how the book is structured. And then the other point is, of course, I want to find information on how to deal with a specific issue, and it doesn't appear that the DMG covers it.
Right.
There are other things that we're addressing based on feedback. Like we know that there aren't a lot of common magic items in the magic items chapter of the DMG.
Yeah.
So we're going to absorb the common magic items from the Xanathar's Guide to Everything book. And add a few more items as well that fill what we believe are sort of gaps or holes.
The DMG is a great resource for anyone who wants to create their own campaign, their own world, and giving them that structure, because I think that's every Dungeon Master's instinct at some level. Like, we do have a lot of great campaign settings, but like to have that ability to like, because like you said, it's very daunting, and how it's structured now, it's like create an entire universe and a monetary system and, you know, lawyers. Like, that's
right.
a lot.
Like, is that really the most important thing you should think about first? I'm
because
not sure it is.
You're probably going to do it as you go.
Right, yes.
Like,
yes,
yeah.
and there is some great advice in the DMG about a number of topics, about how to launch a campaign, but oftentimes it's sort of couched or buried in parts of the book where it may not be intuitive to you. And then there are things which are invaluable to DMs, but are also kind of locked away. Like if I told you, oh, there are firearms rules in the DMG,
right.
You probably know that. Not all DMs do.
Yeah.
And those who know it probably don't know which part of the DMG it's in. Is it in, chapter 1, chapter 5, chapter 8, front, back, whatever. Finding the information and putting it in places where it's more easily found is key. So one of the cool things we're doing with the new DMG is all of those kind of stray bits are now being collected into a rules cyclopedia within the book and alphabetized. So if you want firearms, go to the F section of the rules cyclopedia. Easy to find.
Is there other content that is going to make it very easy for players to transition into being dungeon masters who have very, very little experience? Because we need more dungeon masters.
Okay, here I would just like to say that one of the things that I feel like we're missing is a section on exactly what a DM does. What he needs to know, what he needs to run a game, especially as far as the rules, materials, tools, etc. Information on taking some notes, mistakes, how to approach them, how to cope with them, that kind of thing. Also the unexpected. These things are going to happen. Some things to cope with it. Let's give him a good starting point even before he begins to learn the rules. I mean, he needs to know the rules. That has to be emphasized. Okay, so let's carry on. Oh yeah, and don't forget my worship book, because that does come in handy.
Yes.
Rather desperately.
Absolutely. A couple of things we're planning to do is do more show, not tell, in the DMG. And by that I mean, we're going to give you specific examples of the types of things that we're talking to you about. A specific campaign, for instance. The DMG will now contain one that you can basically just either copy and emulate or just pick up and use and make your own. In addition, we're reworking the adventures chapter to help DMs really create their own adventures by giving them examples of adventure content. And this is not like published adventures like our big books. This is a new approach to, okay, DMs, how much information do you actually have to create and prepare for yourselves to run your own adventure? Once we tell you that, we'll give you some examples, some short, wonderful examples of adventures that were made very, very quickly with minimal prep that give you a whole evening or session of play. Another cool thing that we're doing, and this is feedback that we received as well, is a lot of DMs don't know that much about sort of the vast history of the game. Maybe because they've only been DMing for a year or 5 years. They don't know who some of our historical characters and locations are. They might hear bandied around the Temple of Elemental Evil or Zuggotmoy, but they don't really know who these places and characters are. So one of the things we want to include in the new DMG is a lore glossary, where we define, in alphabetical order, all of the sort of key movers and shakers and historically significant locations that keep cropping up in our printed products.
Okay, so this one I'm a little skeptical about, a history/lore glossary. First off, is it really needed? If you DM long enough, you will pick up a lot of stuff. When you're playing longer, you'll pick up a lot of it. I have to ask, is this going to help me as a DM or a new DM to run a game? I think it could be useful for adopting modules, but I'm not sure. Okay, so let's continue on.
We just sort of mention offhandedly Demogorgon, Orcus, Waterdeep.
Yeah.
And have these things basically in one central location. So if a DM doesn't know what it is, they can go to this one place and find out at least a little nugget of information.
Just in your experience, because you've been dungeon mastering for some time, but like you've done like live play shows, you've taught a lot of people how to dungeon master, you've had to listen to people's anxieties. I'm one of them. Like, what are some like the learnings that you've gotten from all of that over time? Because we've had like people that we work with, we've had friends that started dungeon mastering. You've kind of witnessed this process over and over again. What do you think are some of the first things that a dungeon master tends to be nervous about and learns?
I think that one of the first things is it is now increasingly common that DMs learn by watching other DMs on YouTube or Twitch or whatever. They watch Critical Role, blah, 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 blah. And all these shows, there are so many DMs out there doing their thing that I think a lot of DMs think, I can do that, but I'm not sure I can do it as well.
Right.
So one of the things that I'd want to address in the DMG is that every DM is unique. Every DM has their own style, and embrace that. And your style will change and morph depending on the group you're with. Because Dungeons & Dragons is a social game, so there's an alchemy that happens at the table. Not all groups are the same.
Right.
And if you're a dungeon master, you've got your own ideas, but you're bringing them to a group of players, and they're going to bring their own ideas and their own characters, and then it's going to become a unique thing, and embrace that uniqueness. And then the other thing is, improvisation is really the key to great DMing, is the willingness to be open to new ideas and to potentially put aside something you've prepared in favor of the spontaneous, let's just see where this goes approach.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be inconvenient because you do have a plan and a destination in mind, but it's okay. No plan you make has to go to waste. Anything you've prepared, even if they go off on a tangent, if you're patient, you'll find a way to get that content back into the game, or they will gradually steer themselves, or you will steer them back toward what you had in mind earlier.
Okay, I'd kind of like to say something about this now because I've seen it on Critical Role and other things, and especially for new DMs, this can be kind of tricky. I mean, yes, you kind of want to give a good clear direction for the players to follow, but the idea that you're steering them is kind of a bad idea, mostly because too much steering and you're leaning in towards what's called railroading. Sometimes it's better just to listen to the players and move with them and be prepared, innovate, bring things into the game that can work. Remember, the point here is for everyone to have fun and, get some entertainment. This is a game. Okay, so I guess I've ranted enough. Let's move on.
And I think making DMs aware that their uniqueness is important, that their experience will change depending on the group they're running for, and that change is also important, are key.
How do you express to anyone who is like watching this video or any video how fun dungeon mastering is? Because I did mention, like, there's anxiety, you get nervous, I get nervous every time.
Of course.
But it's so worth it. Why is it so worth it to you? Because you come back every time.
Yeah.
You always come back to...
I always come back to it. It pulls me back in. There are many things about dungeon mastering. One is there's the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
There's something about telling a story that is compelling. And we all have stories in us trying to get out.
Okay, I'd like to interject something here too. I do a lot of amateur writing, and I really love it. And I love writing a good story. But he's bringing up the point that D&D is about storytelling. But you have to realize sometimes the story tells itself. Random things will happen. Players' actions will be way different than what you thought the story was. You have to flow with it, and that's part of the fun, and that's part of the magic of telling stories with D&D. Okay, back to the
Rolls a
story.
1. And so that's gratifying. The other gratifying thing is when you're at the table, there is a magic to D&D storytelling that's different from all kinds of storytelling because you can get hit with stuff out of left field. You've got dice helping you to determine things randomly, so nothing can be assured. That spontaneous eruption of randomness is energizing. People get excited around the table when somebody rolls a 20 or when somebody rolls a 1, and what that means. People get excited when, or as a DM, I get excited when a player does something completely unexpected or tries something that in my mind I hadn't anticipated was even possible. And then it's like, oh, you're going to use that spell in this situation, or you're going to do that thing. Interesting, that it gets the blood pumping and it gets the neurons firing. And at the end of the session, whether you've ended on a cliffhanger or you've come to just a naturally satisfying resolution, or even if everybody's died, there's kind of like an energy at the table, an excitement that is different from other forms of entertainment, and you feel it. You either feel excited about coming back for the next session because there's a whole bunch of unresolved issues, or you're just feeding off the player's emotions. They're either excited themselves or energized for the possibilities for their characters in the future, or they're just chattering about ideas. One of my favorite things at the table is just to listen to players talk. And one of the great gifts of the best DMs I've ever met is just their ability to
Listen.
open their ears, keep their mouth shut,
Yeah.
and just listen to the players talk. Because you'd be surprised how many ideas and how much fun and energy comes out of just listening to the players do their thing.
It's probably my favorite thing, because I think you've won as a dungeon master when you've gotten the party to either be so nervous about what to do next, or that the party is so conflicted that you are no longer even really dungeon mastering.
Right.
You're just kind of a spectator.
Exactly.
At this point.
Or the situation is so immersive that they just begin plotting
Yeah.
and engaged in the planning of something. And you're just like, yes, plan. I've got my plans behind the screen, but I want to hear your plans. And let's see how your plans interact with my plans. It's super exciting. And I think that's the draw. Those elements all bring me back to DMing over and over again because I just can't get enough of it.
Is there a bit of pressure? Because there is a D&D movie out now, and this is like you are enhancing, revising the Dungeon Master's Guide, and we're going to have all these new players suddenly interested in playing D&D, and also all these new dungeon masters. Like, you and I both had our ways that we got into D&D, but like so many, this is going to be like a key moment in time for D&D.
Yeah, for a lot of new folks, this is going to be their first Dungeon Master's Guide. That's exciting because I remember my first Dungeon Master's Guide. And
Okay, guys, I want to interrupt one more time just to get some final words in here. First off, I really like what they're saying. I think that they're moving in the right direction. I think he has a good idea of ways that they can fix some of the issues, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they do it. There are a few things. One thing that isn't mentioned here or in the rest of the video is I would like to see a section on how to adopt and run modules, because for new DMs, I think that this is a good way to go. Also, I think I would like to see some more material, especially for new beginners, about how we can better support combat, social interactions, and exploration. These are the three aspects that I like to focus on when I'm gaming, and I would like to see more material that will help me to do that. Experience points, options, anything that they can give that will help in that regard. Now, I want to tell you about what I think is the greatest weakness of the DMG, and that is that it just covers too many topics. It is trying to put so much into one book that it's just impossible to do service to everything that needs it. So my suggestion is remove world building. Let's put that in its own book. That'll give more room, and you can put the detail into it that needs to be there for everyone, new and experienced GMs. Okay, so before we get to the end of this, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. So I'm going to say bye for now. I'm going to finish out the video. I will see you on the next one. And thank you.
it was exciting.
Yeah.
Reading it from cover to cover with 8-point type.
Yes.
Now, the new DMG is not going to have 8-point type. These
you.
eyes are too old to read 8-point type. I'm just saying. But it was formative. And I still remember things like page numbers from that DMG. Like I know what page number that so-and-so table was on or that piece of art was on, because like a sponge, I just couldn't get enough. And I look forward to the new DMG being that experience for piles and piles of new gamers.
And again, we can't say enough. This is completely, this works, this is 5th edition. This works with 5th edition.
Yes, this is 5th edition.
This is all this is.
That's right.
This is more 5th edition, just a better,
that's right.
meaner
We're taking the
Dungeon
5th
Master's Guide.
edition DMG, which is, I don't think anybody in the universe would say, that book's a 10 out of 10. It's so perfect, don't change a thing.
Yeah.
I think the score of the DMG is something lower than that, and this is just us trying to get it closer to that 10.
Why do you think there were some missteps in the original DMG for 5th edition? Was it like, because that team used to be, your team used to be very small too, right?
I mean, yes, and that might be the essence of all of it, is back in 2012, 2013, when we were working on the core books, the team was incredibly small. And we were releasing them all basically at the same time.
Yeah.
In addition to doing a starter set and a pre-5th edition product that was sort of a bridge between 4th and 5th called, I think, Ruins of Dragonspear Castle or something like that. All these products were being done by a small number of people on a pretty ambitious timeline.
Yeah.
And resources were at a premium in terms of art budgets, freelance availability budget, freelance budgets, just staff resources. And so we focused a lot of attention on the player's handbook, of course, because that's the core system. It has to be as right as it can. And we focused on the monster manual because we wanted to make sure that the monsters were of appropriate threat and complexity for the game system. The DMG, I wouldn't say it got short shrift, but it kind of had to wait in line. And we did a lot to that DMG pretty quickly. And like a couple days, the day after it went to the printer, Jeremy Crawford and I were sitting at lunch going, the next time we get to do this book, we want to do this, simply because we couldn't lavish the attention on it that we felt it really needed
Right.
and deserved.
And if it was that way the day it was getting published, then 10 years from then.
Yes, yes.
Lots of
One of the
findings.
things I said right the day after the DMG went to print is, I wish we could have included more better maps. DMs love maps, ready-to-use maps,
Right.
maps that are repurposable often. And that was just one of many things that we didn't have time for at the end of the process back in 2013 and early 2014. But we have time now.
I understand, like, it may be a bit too soon to talk about the monster manual, but there is some information to share about it.
Okay, guys, I'm going to stop it here. I really don't want to go into the monster manual. I just wanted to focus on the DMG. And that's pretty much what the rest of the video covers, is the monster manual. If you're interested, you can catch this video online. I will put a link to it in descriptive section with the video. Again, thank you and goodbye for now.